Okay, as we begin this morning, I just want to say that I firmly believe with all of my heart that life is a tremendous gift. Life is a gift from God, and I am so grateful, regardless of anything that I've been through. I'm so grateful for the life that God has blessed me with. But I also think that sometimes it takes certain circumstances to shake us up in our lives, to get us to the point where we understand that life is a gift. Because the fact is, we can get so caught up, we can get so consumed with so much other stuff in life, stuff that really doesn't matter all that much. And before we know it, we've kind of missed a good part of our life, maybe even the vast majority of our life. We get caught up in stuff that is just, when you look at it, you look back at it, it's kind of silly. And then we find out that life has kind of passed us by. There was some great advice given, the famous words of Ferris Bueller in the 1986 movie Ferris Bueller's Day Off. I don't know if you saw that, but he gave some really, really great advice in that movie. Ferris said, life moves pretty fast. If you don't stop and look around, once in a while, you could end up missing it. And that's actually true. That's a sentiment that is actually echoed in Scripture, because that is a fact. And as we begin this morning, I want to ask you guys, how many of you guys like games? You like to play games? Are there game players here? A lot of people like to play games. My wife loves to play games. My kids, they love to play games. They go to trivia night and different things, and they play all kinds of games. We'll even watch, at our house, we watch certain game shows because we love games. Anyone ever watch, there's a network called the Game Show Network on some cable channels or whatever, and they have game shows playing 24 hours a day if you just can't get enough of games. It has reruns, though, a lot of reruns from the 70s, which are kind of alarming, like the Newlywed Game and the Dating Game, and you watch these shows, and they kind of show you some of the fashion from the 70s. If you grew up when I did, it takes you back, and it also makes you grateful that there's not a whole lot of photographic evidence of you back in those days, right? They were wacky times for fashion. It was kind of crazy. I'm so glad that there aren't any pictures of me back then. But games are fun. My wife actually knows a family when we were living in Tennessee. She knew a family from Jonesboro, Tennessee, they were on a pretty big game show. They were on Family Feud. A family that she knows played on Family Feud. They didn't win, though. In fact, they didn't do very good at all. They didn't even get out of round one, but they played the game. You know, they were on a game show. They played. How many of you guys have ever played this game called The Game of Life? It's an older game. Raise your hand high so I can see. Yeah, the Game of Life, it came out back in the 60s. It's a great game. I played it a lot when I was growing up, The Game of Life, and it's still a popular game today. We have it. We have The Game of Life. We also have the computer version, which is kind of the same thing, just now updated and digital. And I really like, one of the reasons I really like The Game of Life is because it actually takes you through some of the choices. If you're playing it as an adult, you go through these events and these choices that we all kind of encounter in life, in real life. For instance, there are all these choices you have to make in this game. There are choices about your job, about salaries and paydays and stock market crashes and everything. That's kind of surreal, right? Your money just disappearing. But as a player, you try to navigate through all that stuff. And the goal of the Game of Life, if you're playing the game, is to add up, at the end, you add up all your stuff, and then the person who has the most cash value, they win. That's how you decide who wins the Game of Life. That's how it works according to Milton Bradley when they set up the game. And you work your whole life, and your goal is to retire in millionaire estates and live the good life, I guess. Right there it is. That's what it's all about. That's life. But have you ever wondered if that's really the way it works? Because a lot of people actually live their life as if that's the way it really, really works. I mean, in the real game of life, a lot of people, they think they play that way. I used to think that for the longest time. But is it really all about the one with the most cash value or the most things at the end of their life, that when it's all added up, they win and they end up in millionaire estates? Is life really all about possessions and money and value? Well, I can tell you for sure, absolutely, that is not what God says life is all about. That's not how God looks at it. But a lot of people sort of have, I guess, the Milton Bradley philosophy on life, and they get caught up in this just wheel, this cycle of trying to get more and more and more. And that leads us to a good question. How do we know what real success looks like in the game of life? Who decides? I mean, who gets to pick what it means to be successful or to win in the real game of life? How can we know for sure? Because we're all actually playing that game right now, right? Everybody here this morning, you came here. You're living your life right now. All of us here this morning, we're playing the game of life right now. Listen, here's some good news for you. You don't have to guess about it. You really don't have to wonder or guess or question. God actually gives us the answers to these very profound questions in a book that was written literally thousands of years ago. And it's amazing because it speaks to our life even today. It's called the Book of Proverbs. And the Book of Proverbs is a book. It's tucked away in the Old Testament. It's one of my very favorite books because there's so much wisdom in this book. It's a book that can help us actually succeed at the game of life. It really can help you make better choices in your life. We're going to take a look at some of it today. And I want to begin with the very first verse in the very first chapter of the book of Proverbs, because that's where you should start, right? And I really there are many different versions of the Bible. I like the Message paraphrase for this introduction to Proverbs. And it says it like this. This is what the Message version says. These are the wise saying of Solomon, David's son, Israel's king. You need to know right up front that this book is in large part written by Solomon. Not all of it. Some of these things they predate Solomon. But in large part, Solomon wrote these, and he was the son of King David. And he was considered to be the wisest man that ever lived in his day. He was considered to be so wise. God actually gave him, you come to find out, God gave him a special gift of wisdom and understanding and insight. And people in the ancient world would travel from all over the world just to speak to him. People came from all over the place just to have a conversation with him because he had this wisdom, and they needed wisdom in their life. And these are his sayings. These are his proverbs. And a proverb is just a short little pithy statement that should be thought about. Like you read it, and you should really not just read the words on the page, but these words should be considered and maybe even meditated on because they help you understand life. It does take some discernment, but it's pretty profound. As you read this opening in this passage here, it goes on to say, these proverbs are written down so we can know how to live well and right and understand what life means and where we're going. It's really a manual for living. Who knew that life came with an operator's manual? I mean, just think about what this is saying. If you want to understand in your life, if you're confused and you want to understand how to live right and well, how many of you guys want that? I mean, count me in. If I can understand life, I need a little bit more understanding in life. And if you're young, it goes on to say, if you're young and you want to really understand what life is all about, because it gets really confusing, it can be really, really confusing, honestly. And if you want to understand these things, it is a manual for living. That's what this book is for you. And like I said, I mean, there's a manual. Nobody told me this when I was young. There's a manual for living. There's a user's manual. And God says, yes, there actually is. And it's called the Book of Proverbs. It helps us navigate the highways and the mountains and the valleys of life because you're going to travel all of those roads. And here's even more good news. What this really means is that as we explore this book, as we try to understand some of these things here, we're going to learn these tried and true principles on how to navigate our lives, how to navigate every aspect of our life. Like things like, it's amazing, this book covers everything, our social life, our relational life, our financial lives, all of these things, how to navigate friendships and family and parent and child relationships, male and female relationships. We're going to learn principles on how to navigate our financial life. And man, I could use that one. I really, really could. Because it seems like I'm always running out of money. What we see, though, in this book is that we can protect our lives. We can protect those that we love. And it's stuffed full of all kinds of insight and wisdom that comes from God. That's what Proverbs is. It's really a manual for living. And the cool thing is, it's like I said, it's time tested. It's been around for thousands and thousands of years. And I'm just telling you, it can help you even today succeed in the game of life. That's what the book of Proverbs is really all about. And as you play the game, if you play it God's way, here's some really, really good news. You can't lose. There's like this ironclad guarantee. Did you hear that? If you play the game of life according to God's ways, there is a guarantee that you cannot lose. Now understand, you might not succeed according to the world standard today. You might not succeed according to some predetermined idea that you have in your mind. Certainly not the Milton Bradley philosophy of get all you can before you die. But you'll succeed in God's eyes for sure. That's for sure. And ultimately, that's what really matters as we move into eternity. Because here's some news for you too. Every single one of us will go into eternity. It doesn't matter whether you believe in God or not. Everybody goes into eternity. And what God has said is that the things that we do in this life will echo into eternity. There are things you could do in this life that will affect your eternity. And God promises that no matter what you go through here and now, you can't lose an eternity if you live life his way. So first things first, if we're going to play God's way, this is the first thing that we learn is that we have to learn to play wisely. And we should seek wisdom, that we need wisdom. To navigate life, you need some wisdom. In fact, as you look at the book of Proverbs, it says that it writes this out in just clear language. And, you have to have some discernment. You have to have some understanding. So what do? Here's what you do. Proverbs 4:7 says this: wisdom is supreme, meaning you really got to get wisdom. And it says, get wisdom even though it costs you everything you have, even though you have to empty your bank account, even if you have to turn in your 401k, cash out, whatever. If it costs you all the money and things that you have, get wisdom. Now, why? Why is wisdom so important? Well, because wisdom will guide you through all aspects of your life and all the decisions that you make in life. And the truth is, if you have wisdom, all of that stuff will come around again because you can use wisdom to, so get wisdom no matter what. That's what you should get first. We'll get wisdom, and everything else will be cream cheese. Everything else will work itself out. You'll have, that's why you can't lose. That's why God says you just simply cannot lose. Now, this is a great idea here, though. The wisdom, especially in Scripture, wisdom is not about your IQ. It's not about how smart you are or how much schooling you've had, and that's really good news. It's not about your SATs, your ACCs, or ACTs, or your MCATs. I'm glad that it's not about that. It's not about any of those things. It's not about how well you did in high school or how well you did in college or whether you're a rocket scientist or, working fast food. It doesn't matter who you are or what you have. I mean, you can have a PhD. You can have multiple PhDs. And you can have all that stuff, and according to the Bible, you can still be a fool. And I've known people like this. There are a lot of people like this. Or you can be somebody who didn't do well in high school. Maybe you dropped out or you got your GED. You don't have real education. But according to the Bible, you can still have wisdom because it's not based on your IQ. I know a lot of people like that too. They're very simple educational roads in their life, and yet they're very, very wise people. But listen, biblical wisdom is not about how much you know. Really, biblical wisdom is about how much you apply the wisdom of God to your life. It's really about the choices that you make. And many of you've probably seen, there's a series of books that started a number of years ago, and it's been around for a good while. It's called The Complete Idiot's Guide to Whatever. You guys know these books? The Complete Idiot's Guide to Whatever. And they have guides for this and guides for that. You can find an idiot's guide to everything. A few years ago, I actually picked one up. I picked up the Idiot's Guide to Simple Household Repairs because I wasn't good at that kind of stuff. But I got to tell you, honestly, it didn't help. I'm still an idiot when it comes to household problems. And it's because the reason I'm still an idiot is because if you're not already good at fixing stuff, this book isn't going to help you. It doesn't make you good at fixing stuff. It just tells you how to fix stuff. And so it didn't really help me at all. That's the truth. And so now, rather than using that particular a guide to common household repairs, I have a different guide. It's a phone list. It's a phone list of handy guys that I call. If I have a problem, I'll call one of these. And I'm so grateful that I have guys I can call, and they're gifted and talented in these ways, and they can help me out, you see. But the Idiot's Guides, a great series of books, sold millions and millions, but they're for those who are idiots. I mean, it's right there in the title, right? That's the deal. The word idiot is it's a fascinating word, though. Idiot. You probably think you know what idiot means, but I guarantee many of you don't really, because many people think idiot means that you're stupid, or uneducated. However, the word idiot doesn't mean that at all. The word idiot comes from a Greek word. The Greek word sounds much like it. It's idiotes. And the definition of this word is pertaining to yourself. And what it really means is you are yourself alone. You belong to yourself alone. You are a single force of one. The Greek word literally can mean of one's own self, meaning your own self is supreme. It's not about just, you don't know anything. It's actually, the root meaning of this word of idiot is about people who go through life on their own. They don't need help from anyone. They don't need guidance from anyone. They just live life on their own. Do you guys know that? That's what idiot really means. It doesn't mean that they're stupid. It means that, they just, people assume that, but what idiot means is that they go through life, they face life's problems and challenges all on their own. They go through life alone. They face the problems on their own. They're not open to the input of anybody or any insight or instruction from anybody older or wiser or even God. They don't want advice from any, biblically speaking, they are not open to input from God or his word or anything. In the Hebrew language, it's most often translated as fool. For example, Psalms 14 says, the fool, the idiot, says in their heart, there is no God. That's what an idiot does, according to the Bible. And the way that really works out is this. It's not like they walk around all day saying, there is no God, there is no God, there is no God. They don't say that in their life, but they live life. They make choices in life as if there is no God. And they don't need God. They don't need the wisdom from the Bible or anything. And the wisdom in the Bible is about how you live more than how much you know. And so some idiots, they live their life just all based on their own ideas and their own goals. And when it comes to this whole idea of wisdom, the way you get it is you begin to open yourself up to the fact that God has certain truths. There are certain truths in life. These are not relative truths. These are actual truths. You start to open up to the outside influences from God and others that will help you achieve success in life. This is how you should go through life. But an idiot goes through life on their own. And what we come to learn is that the book of Proverbs has like these foundational principles. If you're building something, the foundation has to be good or you're going to lose everything, right? And the principles that are found in the Bible, I believe, once they are understood, once you understand them and begin to apply them over various generations and various cultures, it doesn't matter because it intersects with every single one of us in all kinds of positive ways. That is what I believe. But they apply to all of us. These principles, there's nobody in here who's excluded from this wisdom from God. There are some principles in life that everybody everywhere has to live with, in all cultures at all times. For example, in the book of Proverbs, it's loaded with these very true principles. And it doesn't matter where you live or what culture you're in or who you are, these principles are a foundation that you begin to live your life upon. It's kind of like gravity. Like gravity, this is the formula for gravity. It's a fundamental law. It's a physical law, and it applies to all people everywhere at all times. Nobody escapes the effect of gravity, and these are kind of the same thing. When it comes to wisdom, there are fundamental things that apply, and these things are revealed by God, and it applies to everybody everywhere throughout all time. And what Proverbs is going to do is it's going to let us begin to hear from God about these things. God actually tells us in this life manual how we should live life and how the universe is all wired up, and it comes directly from God. And you get on the same page with God in your life, you start living life the way that God has set it up, and you can't help but succeed in the game of life. It's wisdom from God. That's what Proverbs is. It's from outside of ourselves, and it instructs you, and it helps you, and it guides you. So over the next several weeks, we're going to be talking about this kind of stuff. We're going to talk about Proverbs and how different aspects of our life, our work life, our social life, our family life, our spiritual life. And I just challenge you, if you want to live a better life, if things are confusing for you, and maybe you've traveled some strange paths or whatever, you want to understand life and what it's really all about, I challenge you to mark your calendars and be here, because we can all learn from God's wisdom. And if you know others, if you have friends or you have family and they're having a hard time in life, like right now, life is really hard for a lot of people. It's very, very, very confusing. I would just ask you to invite them, because this, even if they don't believe in God, because this wisdom applies to all people at all times in all situations. It is universal wisdom that you can use in life, hearing from outside of ourselves what God has to say about actually winning or succeeding in the game of life and playing it wisely. That's what we're going to try to learn how to do here. Another principle that we see from the book of Proverbs, if we're going to understand and succeed at life, we need to have the right priorities. In your life, there are certain priorities. And you might have never sat down and made a list. These are my priorities. But I guarantee you, if I was to look at your schedule and your checkbook, I could tell you what your priorities are, your bank statement. Nobody really uses a checkbook anymore, do they? I mean, not too many people. I don't use a check. But if I look at how you spend your money and how you spend your time, I can tell you what your priorities are. Some of you guys have a priority. When you play a game, some people play just to win. How many people do we have here that when you play, winning is goal number one? Any winners here? Yeah, you play and the goal is to win. Other people, they play to have fun. How many guys play to have fun? Like many more of you. You just want to relax. You want to kick back. You want to have some fun. Those of you who play to have fun, have you ever noticed that when the person who plays to win starts to play the game, that they totally transform? Right in front of your eyes. I mean, they can be the nicest person ever, right? They're a kind person. They invite you over. Dinner was nice. It was pleasant. You're at their house. Everything is good until the game starts. And then they'll slit your throat. Because to them, winning is the goal. And that's all they want to do. Game on, baby, because winning is what it's all about. We all play with different priorities in life. Some people play to win. Some people play for enjoyment. Some play for money. Some play for fame. Some play for success. I mean, when people go through life, these are things that people pursue. I played that way for many years in my life. That's really what I was trying to do. I didn't even consider God or what God wanted for my life. I didn't even think about that kind of thing. A lot of you guys know that when I answered the call to God to become a minister, it was only back in 2007. I was already an adult and had several careers and everything. But what you might not know is that actually the call to be a minister came many years before that. I just didn't answer the call. I just wasn't interested. You know, I answered the call much later than the call came. I was too busy doing life my way. I had my own priorities and I played life, to win. That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to have more than everybody else. But at a certain point in my life, and I remember the day, I remember this as clear as anything else, the date and the time that I began to actually respect God in my life. For maybe the first time as an adult, I began to really acknowledge who God was and seek him out. Do you know that in the Bible, that moment in the book of Proverbs, it says that respecting God is the beginning of wisdom. It's actually the beginning. That is the beginning. That's how it all starts. That's how wisdom begins. When you acknowledge that there is a God and you're not him, and you begin to change your priorities. That's just the beginning of your relationship with God. That was the day that I went from being an idiot to being a person looking for wisdom. And I remember that day as clear as a bell. Now, I'm still an idiot in a lot of ways, okay? I'm not up here telling you I got it all together or I have all this wisdom or anything, but because I did open myself up to God, I began to learn what I would call the ways of wisdom. And it didn't come all at once. I mean, here's what Proverbs says, though. In Proverbs chapter 1, verse 7, it says, "The fear of the Lord, this is the beginning of knowledge." It's the beginning. In other words, you learn the 1, 2, 3s and the ABCs. That's all great. That's good. That's the beginning of knowledge. That's how you start out, right? That's when it actually comes. But when you begin to respect and obey God, that's really the beginning of knowledge and wisdom. And the fear of the Lord here doesn't mean that you walk around being afraid of God because he's going to strike you with lightning. A lot of people think that because it says the fear of the Lord, and they're afraid of God. People have read that, and that's what they think all the time. But really, the word fear here really means respect. To begin to honor and respect God. It's about reverence for who God is, that God is God. And what happens when you start living your life with this respect for God is you begin to understand that there are two paths in life. There's man's wisdom, but there's also God's wisdom. And it changes how you view yourself and how you view others and how you view the world around you. It changes the decisions that you make. You begin to have this reverent respect for who God is and what he says. And it's not that you're terrified of him. It's that you are aware of his presence every single day of your life. And your priorities, the funny thing is, once you begin to understand this, your priorities begin to change. In fact, that's a theme that you see runs through the Bible all the time. You see it in Proverbs chapter 9, verse 10. It says this, "The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding." This is so important. It starts with acknowledging who God is. That's really when you move from being an idiot to being somebody seeking wisdom. That's where it all started in my life. And I can tell you, the climb from that place where I was in my life was incredibly challenging. I wasn't in a good place at all. It was not easy. It was not easy at first. I had some very big issues in my life that I had to resolve and come to terms with, things that had to be dealt with, mainly because of the decisions that I had made in my life. I had made a mess of my own life. The days and the weeks and the years from that moment when I began to respect God, and I got on my knees, they were not easy days, weeks, or even years. They were hard. They were hard times. It didn't all come together, right? Like life didn't get, demonstrably easier the next day after I bowed and prayed to God. It didn't come all together. It was a struggle. It was still a struggle. It was a battle, and it was difficult. I'm telling you this because I don't want you to think, I just assumed that when I came to God, everything would be hunky-dory, that God would fix everything in my life, but there were many issues that had to be dealt with, and so it took some time. It was challenging. There were times when I wanted to give up. There were times when I didn't care at all, and I thought, there were times when I was angry at God, and I was angry at everybody else, and I was angry at myself. I was angry at the world, but with the help of God, what I was doing was I was slowly putting my life back together. And with the help of God and God's grace, it wasn't easy, but it can happen. It can happen with His grace and with His wisdom. You begin to change the priorities of your life. You make different decisions. Now, I tell you this for a reason, because I know some of you guys here right now, you're dealing with some things, and you could use some wisdom in your life. You're wrestling with all kinds of things. You're actually, these things are weighing you down. I know this because I lived life. I know exactly how this works. I want you to know that if you begin to live your life with different priorities, if you live with the fear and respect of the Lord, you begin to put God in first place in your life. If you're willing to do what Jesus said, which was actually lose your life so that you can find it. Losing your life, you can then find it. God is in the midst of all of that, and He can give you a life that's really worth living. Right now, it might not seem like it's worth living, but it is. He can help you overcome whatever problems you're up against. You still have to walk those things out in your life, but God won't desert you. Trust me, if God can forgive me and use me, He can do that for anyone. He can absolutely do it for anyone. I don't care what you've done. I don't care what you've been through. I don't care what you're in the middle of right now. God can forgive you and put you back on a path towards wisdom and make you part of His family. He'll help you get back on the right road. You start playing the game of life according to the way that God has wired up the universe, and you change your priorities, and the whole thing begins to change. And it might take some time, but that's okay. You're on a different path. It doesn't mean everything will be easy, but it does mean that you are now playing wisely, and that makes all the difference in the world. You're playing with God first place in your life. You're respecting who God is. That is the beginning of wisdom in your life. What's happening is you're for a lot of your life, you've just done it on your own. You've used your own wisdom, and sometimes that works out okay, but most often, no, it's unfulfilling. And you begin to respect God and live His way, and you are now living a life of wisdom. It changes everything. The third thing I want you to understand today is when we begin to respect God, we begin to see that there is purpose in everything. In a world that seems incredibly random, I mean, sometimes, especially like if you're playing a game, there's a spinner, you roll the dice or whatever, it's all completely and totally random, and life feels like that sometimes. It really does. You spin or you roll the dice or whatever, you get whatever you get. Life is random, and it's just the luck of the draw. People think that's how life really works. I want to show you what God says in Proverbs chapter 16. It says this, you need to take note of this. God made everything with a place and purpose. God made everything with a place and a purpose. That includes you and your life. That includes me and my life. Because God says that every single one of us is made for a place and a purpose. Truth is, you face choices today. You face choices each and every day. You can walk out of here today and you can continue to believe the lie that nothing really matters and that when you die, it's just all over and whatever. You can be a fool. You can do that. And you can say there is no God, and you can continue to live life your own way, or you can start to believe what God says, you can give it a try. Just give it a try and see if it doesn't begin to change your priorities in life. And you believe that God created you for a time and a place, that you actually have purpose in life. You are made with significance because God has given you purpose. God wants you to accomplish something. Each one of us, God wants us to accomplish something in our life. In fact, he calls us his masterpiece. We talked about this last week a little bit. God says that he crafted you and he molded you in such a way that only you can do some of the things that God has planned for you to do. Only you can help some of the people that he needs you to help today because you are gifted and created in a certain way. Only you can make the difference that God wants to make in this life with you and what you have. He wants to bring you real purpose into your life with all the gifts and talents and abilities that he has given you, with all the special skills or whatever that you have. And as we learn these priorities from Proverbs, we're going to learn that we have purpose, that life has purpose. It's not just random. Life has a meaning. We're going to get purpose in our work life. Some of you guys, like for me, a long time in my life, you get up, you get in the car, you drive to work, you work all day. You go home, watch a little TV, go to bed, get up and do it all over again, right? It's just this cycle. It's just in the cycle over and over and over again. How depressing, right? I did that for years. I know what I'm talking about here. It's just kind of ho-hum, just doing, the weeks go by, the months go by. Some of you work in some pretty tough environments. Some of you guys might have a real hard time sharing your faith and navigating that in your workplace. You have a hard time understanding why things are done the way that they are. You see stuff differently maybe than the people around you. Listen, as we begin to learn in this series, what God is going to teach us is that there is a higher purpose than you just going to work. Maybe that's what you do for a living, but you have a higher purpose in life. God wants to bring purpose back into our lives and into our relationships. Even if nothing on the outside changes, you begin to view your relationships with purpose. It changes the way you view others. He's going to help us find purpose in our lives, in our relationship lives. I mean, some of you guys, maybe you've been married for a long time. And because of that, maybe you haven't been on a date in a long, long time. That's not right, right? You need to bring some purpose into your relationship. Each party in the relationship needs to be working to bring purpose to that relationship. The things you can learn from Proverbs are some really, really great principles on how to have these relationships in life and bring purpose into those relationships, or your finances. You know, some of you guys, you live your life spending the money you make, and we wonder why we get to the end of the month and we're out of money. We have more month than money. It's a cycle, and it just keeps repeating itself. The principles in Proverbs are going to challenge us to put purpose behind what we're spending and how we handle our finances. And it can change your life. It can radically change your life. It can change in our social lives and our spiritual lives. Living life on purpose, not just randomly going through life, meandering through life, but you begin to describe and you live your life with greater purpose in your life. And then you also come to understand that you need to have others around you. You need to be inspired to play as a team. You see, there's value in having others around you. When you look at the principles on how to do life with others, that's really what church is all about. Church is supposed to be a place where we can depend on each other and learn from each other and support each other. Ecclesiastes, one of my favorite, also written by Solomon, by the way. And Ecclesiastes, if you're under 40 and you read it, it's a bummer. And you're like, why is this even in there? Because it's really a downer. And then you get to be 40 or 50 and you read Ecclesiastes and you go, oh my gosh, did this guy understand life? Because it all becomes so real. In Ecclesiastes chapter 4, it says this, a person standing alone can be attacked and defeated. But two together can stand back to back and they can conquer. Three are even better because a triple braided cord is not easily broken. Life isn't just about doing it all on your own. That's an idiot. That's what an idiot does. They live life all on their own. I love this. And this is a true story, absolutely true story of a guy who was finishing up a construction project. He had a construction company working with him, and they got almost done, and so he sent them away, and he's going to finish it up on his own. He tried to move 400 pounds of bricks from the fourth floor of his building down to the bottom floor, and he tried to do this by himself. He was going to save some money, right? This is his wisdom, so he's going to do it all on his own. And this is what happens, too, when we try to do life on our own and we don't ask for help. These are his actual words from his insurance claim form. This is what he wrote on his insurance claim form. He said, it would have been too long. It would have taken too long to do it by hand, so I decided to put the bricks in a barrel and then lower the barrel with a pulley that I had fastened to the top beam of the building. After tying the rope securely on the ground floor, I then went up to the top of the building and I fastened the rope around the barrel. I loaded it with bricks and I swung it over the side for its descent. Then I went down to the sidewalk and I untied the rope, holding it securely so I could guide the barrel slowly and carefully down to the ground. However, since I only weigh 170 pounds, the 500 pounds of bricks jerked me from the ground so fast that I didn't have time to even think about letting go of the rope. As I proceeded between the second and third floor, I met the barrel on its way down. This accounts for the bruises and lacerations on my upper body. I held tightly onto the rope until I reached the top, where my hand became jammed in the pulley mechanism, and this accounts for my broken thumb and fingers on my right hand. At the same time, however, the barrel hit the sidewalk with a loud bang, and the bottom of the barrel fell out. With all of the weight of the bricks now gone, ready for another trip? The barrel only weighed about 40 pounds, and my 170-pound body then began its swift descent. I again met the barrel, this time coming up. This accounts for my broken ankle. Slowed only slightly by this collision, I continued my descent and landed on a pile of bricks. This accounts for my sprained back and my broken collarbone. At this point, I lost presence of mind completely and I let go of the rope. So this now empty barrel came crashing down on me. This accounts for the massive lacerations about my head and face. As for the last question on your insurance form, what would I do differently if the same situation arose again? Please be advised that I am finished with this idea of trying to do it by myself. You remember the definition of an idiot? Right? Somebody who goes through, face life's problems all on their own. We do life on our own. When in fact, God really wants to come alongside of us. God doesn't want to control you in life. He wants to come alongside of you in life. But other people, the church, they are here to come alongside you. Listen, I want you to understand this. Church is not just a place that we come to on Sundays to prove to God that we're Christians. That is not what church is all about. There's hardly a day that goes by in my life when I don't thank God for all of the things that he helped me discover on my journey to wisdom. And it was, like I said, the freedom from my past and from all the junk that I got myself into. I'm so glad that all of that is now past and in the past. But I can tell you, one of the reasons why I'm such a big believer in the church is it wasn't just God and his wisdom helping me get out of that dark pit. It was other people. There were other people involved in my life. There are people who are willing to come along beside me and help mentor me and teach me. This selfish guy just looking out for himself, a guy with nothing to offer, really nothing to give to that church. But there were people in that church who were willing to coach and mentor me and encourage me when I was down. And I will forever be grateful to those people who took an interest in me. That's why I believe that the community of the church, I believe it's the only true life-changing instrument that God has on this earth right now. God sets the church up to help others, to rescue others. God changes hearts and he changes lives, and then he provides a support network, a system of support and a community for people throughout their journey as they go through life. That's what the church is, and that's what it's supposed to be. He does that through the church that he built, that he set up. That's why you need to be in church. And it's not just, for what you can give. It's about what you need to help you in life. It's one of the reasons why I believe, as good as video church is nowadays, every church learned how to do their services online, and that's great. But that's not the church. The church is when you gather together. When you walk in, they are there, and they know who you are, and they can pray for you, and they can encourage you, because we all need to be encouraged. And I say that because I'm not just a pastor of a church. I'm not saying that because I'm the minister here. I'm saying it because I am a product of church. It changed my life. It changed the direction. The church saved my life. And I believe that the church can make a huge impact in your life as well. Don't do life alone. Don't go through life with your own wisdom. If you play the game of life God's way, you simply cannot lose. And if you're not, then that's the choice that you get to make. We all have that choice to make. But there's an opportunity for you to begin to move towards wisdom. I'm here to tell you that when you play the game of life God's way, your life gets better. Not all at once, not the very next day, but listen, if God can do it in my life, he can do it in yours. I guarantee you, I have a horrible, horrible past. But if God can do that in the lives of people all around the world, he can certainly do it with you too. I mean, God offers that every time. And as you surrender to him, as you reach out to him, you'll find that God will help you understand things in different ways. And the choice is yours. And every week we give you the opportunity here to come and pray. And we're going to sing that song, Come Thou Fount, again. And as we sing that song, then I'm going to pray for you guys. But if you need special prayer, if there's something going on in your life,